Hi guys, welcome back to Into the Light, a different life story, my show on YouTube and as a podcast with me, your host, Stefan Neff. Down there is that funny button that says subscribe to me. Do that because you're stupid. You're otherwise missing all those fantastic guests that I'm bringing on here. And we all have our stories to tell. And I bring these guests on because I believe that they have shown that the past does not equal the future, that you can turn your life around. And there's so many lessons to learn. So why the hell do you want to reinvent the wheel? Do it all yourself. Why not listen to some of these guys who are just fantastic dudes and dudesses? And so come on, guys. So subscribe to the button and see what the future brings. But no time better to live in than the present. And right now I've got Jobe Neal with me. I'm excited to have Jobe on the show. The reason is we have so far talked about a lot of addictions, typically chemical related, because that seems to be the majority of those things that sort of have come across my path. And that was my path in the past. But there are many other addictions out there, addictive behaviors, from sex to gambling, from adrenaline rushes to eating behaviors. So there are so many other gambling issues that can be as destructive and as overwhelming, and with all the same responses of guilt, shame, etc. So now gambling is one of them. And Jobe, thank you so much for coming on to my show by actually opening up about that and being honest about that.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm happy to share my story, and I hope that it can help someone.
And it is close to my heart. When I was born in 1966 and around about 1970, the first memory that I've got is essentially a cup flying through the air from this way, and then a box of cocoa coming this way across the scene and opening up and the cocoa spilling out in the air. And that was my first literal memory. And that was my mum and dad fighting over the fact that my dad had just been out literally on a bender, but lots of smoking, some alcohol, and lots of gambling. And he had used all the money that my mum had set aside for food for me. So they were not happy, mummy and daddy, at that time. That was sort of one of the first memories. And that was gambling. That is, he spent literally 72 hours gambling around the clock. So therefore, I'm grateful that you're there. And you probably, therefore, will also open up a few maybe painful memories in me. And that is life. That is the cool thing with such a show. How did it all start with you? As a young boy, were you always into competitive games, or how did it start with you?
Yeah, I think if we went really back, it probably is like competitive games, because it wasn't so much for me. It wasn't so much the horses or like, betting on sports matches or anything like that. It was really like the game style ones. Like, and we can get into it later, but particularly it was poker. And I had a few other card games and stuff that I liked, but poker was the vice, I suppose, if you will. But if we were to go back to when it started, I think, and something I've noticed is a lot of Catholic or boys' schools seem to have this thing of like, pretty much as soon as you having all the boys around, I think that like betting and gambling like happens a fair bit between each other. But then as you start to get to that legal age, someone turns 18, the first thing they do is download one of the betting apps. And from there, I think it just started to turn into something that like we all bonded over. Like how we caught up was, you would go to the pub and everyone would be putting money into the machines and watching the horses. And that wasn't so much me, but then we would go back to someone's house and we would play poker with each other. And that's where it started. It grew from friendly games with friends, and then slowly you start upping the stakes and more money gets involved. And then And then I looked outside of that, and then I found online poker, and that was really where it started, because then it started to become behind closed doors as opposed to in the public and with friends, where you can't really, you're not going to lose thousands, or like, at least it's still kept friendly.
And that's, of course, the issue, that is much of addiction is playing out behind closed doors. And I can see where this bloody temptation of social media and apps comes in, because you have to bring yourself to walk into a sleazy back alley and start somewhere, and you have to find these places first where you can actually do poker against some. I get all these kind of dark visions there, and it might actually be a bit disruptive and distracting. So you would not maybe naturally do these things. But if it is just on an app there, you just do it in the evening. And it's so easy because you actually don't have money in your hand, isn't it? You have no idea.
That is definitely the thing that I've noticed with it. It was like, as soon as you, even before you even put it into your account online, I suppose having it on a card as well was just like, it was as easy as, transferring from here to here. The money's never physically leaving your hand, so it doesn't quite feel as painful. You definitely have like a detachment from the money until you've either lost a lot of it or won a lot of it, really. And that's the nature of probably any addiction, really, is like these massive highs and these massive lows, these peaks and troughs sort of thing.
What's your chance of winning in such a game? We always say that the house wins always. I assume the same is with online gaming, is it not?
Well, poker was a bit of a different one in the way that you're playing against other people. So, the advantages and stuff are pretty minimal, unless you're playing against someone way outside of your ability, I suppose is the best way to say it. And you're not typically doing that. I think the biggest thing is that you kind of lose yourself in the game. There's a term in poker that's called going on tilt, which is basically like, if you lose a few hands and you start to like get angry or you get upset, then your ability to read the game really just goes out the window. So suddenly now you're in that mode of trying to win back your losses, and you're doing things that you wouldn't normally do. And then it's like a really quick slide down, because you just start to do things that are kind of out of the optimal game theory. I suppose that's like a term that people use of like, if you stick to optimal game theory, then you'll win. You're staying away from, guessing and everything like that, and you're sticking to what you should be doing, according to the best practices and stuff. But in terms of who wins and everything like that, I think, a really, really good player playing against, people that are similar ability, their advantage becomes like, little of 5% more sort of thing. It's not typically that someone else that's much, much better is going to beat everyone all the time, because you just can't. It's cards. Anything can happen. Same with like blackjack. You could win 70% of the time, every time that you do a certain action, but there's still 30%.
Yet it is the adrenaline rush. Yes, it is the dopamine. What were the feelings that were driving you? Was it initially, was it a high that it gave you? Was it distraction from your life? Was it forgetting pain? Or did it just sneak in?
It was a bit of all of that. So when I really got into it after school, and around the time when I really started to, when I dove into like online and wanting to make that work was, university wasn't going that well. I wasn't really interested in, I was doing law and commerce, and I just wasn't driven by that at all. Like I was falling asleep in classes. I was, not doing any homework or anything. Like it didn't drive me at all. And then I found this thing, and like I was obsessed with, I was watching all of the poker stars on YouTube and everything. Like I was watching these personalities as well. And I think it was, I looked at it as like I attached myself to an identity within that. Like I wanted to be those guys. I wanted to be that, like I wanted to become successful with it. I think that it was an attachment to, I looked at it as becoming successful. There is a way, that there was a path up the ladder. And some people can do it. Some, like, there is a career for some people, but it's like the 1% of the 1% that can do that. And everyone else, because it is so driven by your ability to stay disciplined and emotion and everything like that. But money's involved. How many of us can completely detach from money, really, once you start losing it, once everything like that starts happening? So for me, it was not having a whole lot, the things that I had set up and thought were the way to live life weren't going well. So I wanted to have that identity and be that person. So for a long time it was a drive to be what my new version of success was going to be. And I think as I started to lose more money, there was a deeper attachment to it, because now I started to look at it as, well, I've lost that money to learn these lessons. So I'm getting better because I'm learning more. That was the mindset that was going on. And like, it was, once it started getting a bit more in debt and everything like that and losing more money, it was like, I think it's hard to, should I quit? I thought about it and I thought, but I've lost all this money. What, that would be for nothing. It was like that sunken cost mindset of like, I can't lose all of that for nothing. Like I need to win it back at least, or it should all work out.
Which is, of course, such a natural thing, isn't it? You want to make meaning out of it. You want to and of course, your brain gives you a lot of excuses why you should keep going with your addiction. So our brain is clever as hell when it comes to that. It just warps the reality just a little bit. And suddenly it makes perfect sense to you. Oh, yeah, of course. No. We go back. Tonight is the night. I feel it. I know my left testicle is a bit higher than my right. I feel it. It's tonight is the night. And yeah, tonight is the night to lose more. And it is like that, isn't it? It is. And of course, as always, there are the moments that you win. And then you feel justified. And you say, yes, see, I told you. It's going to be right. What was the biggest win that you had?
I think the biggest win I had was 1,500 from a tournament of, I think 400 or 500 people. Yeah. I think and all of this was, I think the thing that so at the time I was only ever putting in $25 to $50 into my account at any time. I didn't have a lot of money at all at the time. So it was like, I would work 1 day a week and earn like $75 to $100. And I would put like 3/4 of that, if not all of it, into into my account, and I would work it up slowly and work it up slowly. So I think I remember that being like, I'd worked up my account to like $500. This was a cycle that sort of happened a lot. I would put in money, I would get up to 500 or 1,000 and then lose it all in one day because of that, like just started losing and lost control sort of thing. And I think I was down to my last $10 and I put it into a tournament thing. And that was my biggest win.
And of course, yeah, that is how you cement things, how you concrete an abnormal idea and just say, hey, see, that happened, therefore it must be true. Therefore it will happen again like that in the future. And how bizarre is that if you ever think about it? But our brain doesn't work like that. It wants to see that link. It looks for that link. And then once it sees it says, see, yay. And it's bizarre.
Yeah. We're very biased creatures.
Are we not? How many hours a day on the towards the end were you gambling?
I think it was 5 to 6 days a week, sometimes 7, that it was close to 10 to 12 hours, I reckon. Wow. Because it was, and towards the end, I was working pretty much full time, if not like 30 hours a week. So it started to sort of phase out of poker a little bit, but in terms of like, it wasn't, when I first started, I didn't really have a lot to do during the day. So it was just filling that time.
Was that with COVID or was that?
This was a while. This was like 3 or 4 years ago. And then as time went on, like life started progressing and I got a part-time job where I was working a lot more. But the transition wasn't as much out of not playing as like just the hours. So now instead of playing from like, as soon as I wake up to like when I would go to bed with maybe one break in between, it was, I would get home from work, working at a bar, and I would play, until 4 or 5 in the morning, and then I'd sleep for 4 or 5 hours, and I'd get up and I'd play just before I went to work. I'd play, so it was like this, I was barely sleeping. I think that like that's something that like plays on us as well. We stop looking after our health, and it makes you a lot weaker to resist these things as well. You really like, you're just subject to your brain, this voice that you've created that's just, like you said, justifying everything.
How bizarre is that, isn't it? But you have just described addiction in the most perfect way. It takes over your life and it plays you that little sweet symphony that everything is all right. And if I had asked you, is there anything wrong with you? What would you have said? Would you have said that you're in trouble, or would you say, no, that's my lifestyle. That's my, I'm happy.
Yeah. At the time I was very resistant to people that were questioning whether I was doing all right and everything. I was very much like, no, this is, it's like that I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to like prove that this is like, that what I've built is something real. So yeah, I think if anyone did say that, like, challenged whether or not it was valid or anything, and there weren't too many people that knew about it, I kept it very, very private for a while. So it was really only my parents that found out about it. They started checking my bank details and stuff like that when they got the letter in the mail.
When you said
they started questioning things.
What letter was that?
So it was like my bank statements that came in the mail, and they were already a bit suspicious. They checked it, and then like sort of added up over the 3 months, like, oh geez, he's lost this. And in reality it was a lot more. because it wasn't just the money that I was. I mean, there's always that thing with gambling. I think that's like, I put in $50 and I won 500 and I lost it all, but I only really lost $50. Like, you lost 500. Like you can't, like, you can say what you like, but in your, you know that you believe in your head, I lost 500. Yeah. So for me, it was a lot harder than also what it looked like on the bank statement, because I was like, it wasn't just what I was putting in, it was all this money that I was earning and then losing, and then earning and then losing.
So true. In the alcohol setting, we have got a CAGE questionnaire, and CAGE, CAGE, stands for, did you ever feel you have to cut down? And then it goes on alcohol, but you can use the same things for the gambling. So have you ever felt you should cut down on the gambling? A, have you ever felt angry when others talk to you about the gambling? The G is, have you felt guilty about your gambling? And then E is for eye opener, which means basically the drink that you have to take in the morning to steady your nerves. So that doesn't fit with the gambling. But all the other three, you have just ticked all of them already without even pointing directly to it. You had all of them.
I think there is like an eye opener as well, though. Like I had there were a few scenarios like this, but one I specifically remember was because I was always trying to fit it in, like the time that I was trying to gamble and everything. I remember I just finished work and I spent like 2 hours on one of the apps before I went to footy training. And in that 2 hours, I think I lost like $800, like, because I did this, because I was trying to be so quick. You know, I was like, all right, how do I, you know, I started looking at it as like, how do I earn money for the day? Like, how do I try and win this money for the day that I'm kind of like justifying like an income kind of thing? Like that was the end goal. So that was like what I was looking at it like. And I remember losing it so quickly. I remember getting to footy train and just like, it's like everything was happening around me and everyone was talking so like, you know, jovial, and everyone was really happy. But like I was, in my mind, I was just like, I've lost so much money and I can't talk about it with anyone. And like, what have I done? You know, that was one of the moments where I went, what have I done? I've just like wasted 3 to 4 weeks of earning that money. Like I was, you know, every time it happened, I was like, you've messed up your opportunity sort of thing. And then the next day I would wake up and it would be, all right, well, I've got to get back on. I've got to just try again.
And interesting, the eye opener refers to something in alcohol where you have a drink in the morning. For you, the eye opener is literally an eye opening event. So it is the CAGE questionnaire, a little bit redesigned, would fit quite nicely for the gambling there as well, and probably for any kind of other addiction. Cool, I like it. I'm sure someone else had the same idea. So I don't think I'm the brainiest rocket scientist on this world. But no, I like it because ultimately, because it just shows what addiction is. It is just this compelling behavior where we do the same thing again and again, hoping for a different outcome, and which is the definition of insanity in its own right. So it's nuts, but it is there. So how long did the journey last for you?
It was between 2 and 3 years. I can't actually remember now whether it was where it sat more so on 2 or 3 years, but yeah, it was about that amount of time.
And time is flying, isn't it? Because you said yourself how busy you were. You were basically, there was very little sleep, lots of gambling. And by the way, oh yeah, I need to make some money somehow, somewhere. And that's your day gone. Did you do actually anything else? Did you have any other hobbies, or did that all fall by the wayside?
I kept up with sport.
Mm-hmm.
And really it was pretty much, I threw myself into work as well. Like I ended up like supervising that bar that I was working at. So it was going full time there. So it was trying to, really what I avoided was social situations. I think partly is that thing of like, that's where people start to, inquire and ask, how are you going? And you don't want to answer, because it's hard to, even the best liars in the world aren't good liars, unless you're a psychopath. It's pretty easy for people to see, it doesn't sound like he's all right. Like he's saying it, but like, you can see in someone's eyes and someone's body language and throughout the rest of it. So I think social thing was the thing that I avoided the most, but I tried to play it off as if it was more work that was keeping me busy. And it was to an extent, because it was the nights when everyone would be catching up. But I didn't try to catch up with people, for coffee or anything like that, because that was poker time.
Were there other addictions that crept in as well? Often there is co-addiction, or there is cross-addiction. It typically comes out more when you stop one addiction and then another addiction takes over. But were there other things that were equally there? And whilst you were playing poker, did you have a drink? Or did you go through sweets until there's no tomorrow? How was your nutrition like?
I'm definitely terrible for sweets and junk food. It was a lot of like takeaway on the way home from work and stuff like that, to just eat so I can get right to playing. In terms of, it's hard in Australia. I think like our alcohol consumption is looked at probably, it wasn't any worse than anyone else around. I don't think alcohol was really a crutch or anything like that.
But
afterwards, I think that drugs and alcohol came in a bit more.
Interesting, yeah.
In terms of looking at those things, because there was still a little bit of a void there after I stopped, where I was trying to look at myself as successful and stuff like that. So that trying to numb that feeling was there a little bit with the drugs and alcohol.
Interesting.
But not so much during.
Yeah. Okay, and that's cool. And that's often enough how it works, isn't it? It is other addictions become distracting to the main addiction that you have got. The only exception there is when you're really into drugs big time, and let's say you started off with cannabis and migrated to heroin or whatever it is, and then suddenly you can't get the heroin. You take anything else to numb the pain, and you throw in whatever you can ever you get. So that's where things get messy. But ultimately, you stick with one thing. At least in my thing, the gambling was, I guess, yes. When I go back at just simple computer games, I could get very engrossed in that, and it was really there. And then 6 hours later, you think, shit, where did the evening go? So there's that trait already of me as an addict is there, but alcohol was stronger. Alcohol was really the thing that got me. And with hindsight, I don't know what would have been more expensive, in all fairness. When looking at the amount of alcohol I drank, we are talking several tens of thousands of dollars. So, that is per year. So it is, each bottle of wine is what, $10, $15. A bottle of vodka is $30. So, and do that every day. Well, that quickly adds up. And it's the same with you. And that's the crazy thing, isn't it? And
that is absolutely, it's like a small but consistent. It wasn't that I was, and don't get me wrong, this happened sometimes, but a lot more rare, where I put in like, $500 or $700, but it was a lot more like, just $25 to $50 a day for a while. Once I started earning more money and stuff like that, that was exactly. And that is the thing. You find ways to feed it a little bit more. All right, you look for how to supplement it a lot more. So that was me with trying to work more. I was like, I need to, start earning more to be able to incorporate this into my life. And that's not how I viewed it quite at the time. At the time, it was.
Yeah. You're so right. You're so right.
Naturally happened.
I hear you. Absolutely. God, we're really tight on money. I need to work more, not realizing that working more gave me more stress and therefore more excuse to drink. And it's just, when you look at it, it's so fucking obvious. And at the same token, when you're in the midst of it, no, you can't see it, or you don't want to see it. You can see it. And that's where the guilt and shame comes in. But then your brain comes up with beautiful constructs that explains it all to you very perfectly. And therefore, 95% of addicts, if they're asked, are you all right? Absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with me. Me, an addict? Look at the guy down the road. He is an addict. Oh, look at him. That's an addict. Me? Nah, I'm all fine. That's my lifestyle. That's or whatever else you tell yourself. Fuck. What did your parents do? So they got the wake-up call looking at your bank statements and thought, bloody hell. So what was their response?
For a long time, it was like we skirted around the issue, where we tried to have the conversations and everything. And they couldn't really do anything. I think that was the thing was, there wasn't really a lot that what they did do was they stopped giving me access to any money that they wouldn't sort of give me any money. Not that they gave me heaps, but it was a little bit of money here and there for if something came up, if it was, for birthday, they told other family members not to give me money as well. And it was, I think it's a hard thing as well when that stuff starts happening, because then you start to sort of go, there's almost your brain wants to kind of push them away and kind of look at them as how dare they do that? They're looking after you, but you're like, they just don't understand. You're pushing these barriers more and more in the way. But that was sort of how really they could deal with it. But inevitably, the only way that I could work through it really was, actually accepting it myself. The whole time that I was in denial about it, nothing could really be done about it.
You're so right. Yeah, absolutely right. Was there a history of addiction in your family? Did your parents drink, for example, or smoke, or?
Not so much my parents. My dad's gambled and stuff, but not in the same way. So it was, whilst people would put gambling into one box, I think there is a difference between the people that play the games and the people that bet. I think one is well, for me, I can't speak for everyone, but for me, I looked at it as the games and stuff as there's strategy, there is stuff behind it, and there's the identity that I talked about earlier. Whereas I think the other one is his was very social, and it was very, just fun. Like there's no real pathway that he was searching for within that. So I think they were fairly different in that way. But in terms of it's definitely in my family. Like a few family members and stuff have had different types of addictions and stuff. I think something that my mum always said, even from a young age, that I have a very addictive personality. She was very worried about drugs more so than anything else, worrying from a few of the other family members that we had, but also just the way that I indulged in things. It was very much like, if my mum gave me like $10 for the bus, I would spend that all at the Milk Bar in one day and then find a way to get on the bus for free for the rest of the week. Or I would walk to school and take the money and then come back to it halfway through the week and say I spent half of the money on the bus, but I bought some lollies I shouldn't have. There was a lot of that. So mum always sort of had the idea that was bound for me in some way, shape or form.
So it was on the cards. Ha ha. No, it's okay. I hear you, my friend. I hear you. And it is what it is. And of course, you don't want to see it, but you were actually lucky because you still have got both kneecaps. Last time I saw you walking, you still have got all nails on your fingers. I mean, that's actually quite an achievement for a gambler. What can you say? It is something, any addiction that grabs you, it is the same story again and again and again. And luckily for some of us, a wake-up call comes at some stage. That wake-up call might be you literally being dragged, screaming and fighting into rehab. That might be that you end up in jail and this thing. What was the wake-up call for you? What changed it?
I think my one wasn't so much, because I had heaps of wake-up calls, I suppose, but I've always viewed it as you need something else to channel the same energy into. Otherwise, you're going to fall back into the same loop, because there's, there needs to be like this, transformation, and it's hard to really do. It's harder to do if you don't channel that energy. So for me, it was going into, I found a mate came to a business idea and we started working on that together. And that really, it was a complete shift. Like as soon as I went into that, poker wasn't really anything anymore, because I had this new version of like, this is what I'm going to do. This is the identity that I can now create. And this is a pathway. And if I do poker, then it's going to wreck this. I can't commit to this if I don't have money with it. So that's the way I've always viewed it. You need something to channel that same energy into. And that is hard for a lot of people that on the chemical side, it's hard for people to be able to do something like that. But there've been so many studies that have shown that type of thing. Have you heard of the mouse trap? The mousetrap experiment.
Mm-hmm. You tell it. I've had it say.
Johan Harrison did a TED talk on addiction, and he spoke about the one study that we talked about that like really blew up our where we based a lot of our knowledge on addiction was a rat in a cage that had 2 water drips, and one was laced with cocaine. And of course, every single time it would go to the one that was laced with cocaine and it would overdose and die. Someone else came in, I'm not sure who it was, and they created what was called a rat park. And they had a few more rats in there. They made it, and they had activities. They had other things in there. And while some rats still took some of the water laced with cocaine, none of them died. All of them mainly had the other water, and they all thrived. And it was really like eye-opening that, I suppose that thing, channeling that energy into something else, if you have nothing better to do than to gamble, do drugs or drink, then that's what you're going to do. So, yeah, I think, and then he went on to talk about how Portugal has decriminalised all drugs over there, and they put the money spent on criminalising it into rehabilitation, not just in trying to get them better, but putting them into jobs. Absolutely. And that changed everything, because of course, if someone comes they go to jail for addiction and they come out and they can't get a job, what are they going to turn back to?
Absolutely. 100% agreed. And I love to hear that out of someone else's mouth, not myself, because I keep spouting about that. And it's beautiful to see your conviction and to see your passion about that, because I 100% share your assessment of the thing and share the feelings about that. It is the opposite to addiction is connection. The opposite to addiction is recovery and living a life that is meaningful, that is there, that you create, where you take the reins in your own hand and you guide your horse, your cart, you choose where you want to go, and you take active steps and be there, be purposeful in each moment, and decide on a dream. Turn that dream in a very realistic picture, as if you could touch everything, and then take steps in order to achieve that dream that has now become a vision. And with you taking steps, it becomes a mission. And suddenly, by actually taking little steps, there, by the time you've blinked, you are so much further down that path. You have completely changed without knowing it. People look at you and think, what the hell? Who are you? And what have you done with Stefan? And so, and in this case, Joe, this is how your life turns around. And that is what you have essentially done. So someone actually...
Even like if we look at, the way that, like if we criminalize it, there's a shame behind it. But even without the legality with it, all these things, if we look at like stigma, where shame makes us closed off. That's the thing that really, like, you don't want to be judged by everyone else. You don't want to feel shame. So you don't open up and you're not honest about everything. So, and if you're not honest to everyone else, then you're very unlikely being honest to yourself. So on that, like, whether it's, legalized or whether it's internal or external, I think that's probably the biggest thing behind all of this stuff, is like that shame behind it is that thing that really closes us off. So it's like, if you do know someone that's going through all of this stuff, it's like you don't ever help anyone by shaming them into getting out of it. You can't bully someone out of an addiction. And I didn't so much experience this from people, but it was a perception that I thought I would get. And so that would be any advice I would give anyone, is to, if you do have someone you think is in that scenario, is trying to very much come from a understanding point of view, and just hold space for them to speak without judgment, because that's how you start getting them to elaborate on things without, so a man convinced against his will is not convinced. So they have to almost say it themselves, not you tell them what the right thing to do is.
100% right. 100%. That's exactly how transformation is allowed to happen. But it's a very, very hard thing for loved ones like your parents to observe and to not say a word, to not intervene, especially as men. We're fixers. When I come home, the first thing my wife likes to do, oh, bleh, and I get everything of the whole day, and it's okay. But me, the fixer, wants immediately, oh my God, that needs doing. Okay, I will do that. And she just wanted to share. She didn't want me to fix. And nowadays I understand that. For a hell of a long time I didn't. But I am a fixer. Give me a problem, I find a solution, I deal with it. Bob's your uncle. And that's, if now I was put into the scenario where I have to just watch and let someone else learn their lessons the hard way, that's torture. That's torture to me. And we need to realize that is, I'm sure it was not a nice ride for your parents. But things have changed around, and they have changed around because someone believed in you. Someone came up with this business idea. What was the business idea?
It was drop shipping. So it was e-commerce. He came to me with like a business model, and really all we had to do was just try and find products to fill this model, fill the idea. And we did that for probably 2 to 3 years. And it didn't go down perfectly. We had a lot of lessons that we learned and stuff like that, but it was at least it made sense.
Okay.
Yeah,
but also
that energy into it.
Yeah, but it also gave you then suddenly a meaning. It gave you actually a real job. It gave you something to be proud of. Yes, every job, as soon as we become self-employed, there are a lot of lessons you're learning the hard way. Talk about losing money, but at least now you're losing money in a way that you can actually look in the mirror and say, okay, you were stupid with that. You think that anyone would buy that. And now you have got, I don't know, 200 of these dumbbells or whatever you've got lying around at home. That is what it is. Okay. That is the same.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
And now I have that. And that really kickstarted my business now. So, I mean, like I have no regret about that one, unlike poker. So it was, any of those things that we did start could have worked, and I could be in a completely different path, but it's led me down the path I am now. And that is, again, it all comes from the same attachment to a certain identity that has grown a lot more now.
So what was now the new shift? What was the new change?
So now it's a lot less focused on myself. I left doing that business with my friend because it was all about, how do we help us? And I really tried to look for a way to help other people. I knew that was the path that I wanted to go down. It was like working with people and helping them to bring out their stuff. So in the last year, I started a marketing agency, and I help coaches and consultants to grow their businesses, also to launch and promote courses. So it really depends on where they're at in their journey. I can help people that are just starting out, which is extremely fulfilling because there's a lot of people that, they have a great message and they have a desire to really, really help people, but they're just not sure how to start marketing themselves, or they're not really sure about social media. So, there's a lot of just guiding them along that way, and like the ability to help people, help other people is kind of where a lot of my mission for this business has grown, directly help, 1,000, 10,000 people. And if they all help, 1,000, 10,000 people, it's a pretty big impact.
Shit, yeah. Oh, no, that's beautiful. But where did you get the skills in order to do that?
All from the business that I did with my friend. So that all of that marketing and stuff that we did together,
Of
you know,
course.
has given me the ability to show that to other people,
Yeah.
and make sure that other people don't make the same mistakes that I did. That is probably the biggest part of where I've started the business. You know, is like, how do these are the people I want to help first.
Yeah.
And I can guide them through the steps that I'm going through now to grow a business. But in the beginning stages, you know, avoid this, and this, and just focus on this. It's really
nice. And it just shows, because what you have done essentially, you have taken pain and lessons that you have learned, dealt with that, and then used the lessons towards something different. You have become a very different man once you stopped the gambling, but you chose a different path, a different energy that guided you down the line of drop shipping. You built up a new persona in you that you were able to be proud of. And then when you felt enough is enough, there was another sort of catalyst, there was another crossroads, and you now branched out into something. But again, what you're doing is you're actually utilizing your past as very powerful drivers and as very powerful memories that guide you now towards your moral compass, towards the direction that you want to go. And you would have never been that man now had you not gone through the darkness of gambling, had you not had these experiences that made you grow up in a way that many others will never grow up. So ultimately, whilst we beat ourselves up for what we have done as addicts, I believe that you are the classic example of someone who has come to terms with his past and is now utilizing it as a strength. And that says a lot. That says a lot about the size of your kahunas. It takes backbone to actually do that and come out and say, this is me. Yep. Yes, that's the vomit on my T-shirt. Want to see it? But actually.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
There's people don't want to learn from someone that has had an easy path and just had the perfect run. You know, that doesn't come from a point of view of, you know, well, you can understand some of the context that's going on because you've been through the same mistakes. You know, people are a lot more focused on, and this is something I tell people that are trying to do, well, the coaches that are trying to help other people is, you're not trying to show that you're perfect and you've never made mistakes, so follow me. It's, I've made your mistakes. Help me show you how not to make them again. Exactly. You know, that is probably the biggest part about, you know, any coach. You essentially selling to a previous version of yourself.
Exactly.
And in terms of the story, you know, we said it a little bit earlier, but either you own the story or it owns you. So you sort of, they're the two options that you have. You've kind of got to choose, you know, if you choose to be shameful about it, then it's going to make you feel shameful. But, you know, there's a lot, like you said, there's a lot to be learned and a lot to be gained from having it. So,
yes, so true.
Use
so
it.
Right. So right, man. Cool. Jobe, if your message rings a bell with our listeners and viewers, and if they want to get you to know you a little bit more closely, how can they find you? What are you offering?
You can find me on LinkedIn or you can add me on Facebook. I also have a Facebook group called Course Marketing Secrets for coaches and consultants. So if you want to reach me on a personal level, reach me on the personal stuff. If you want to go on the professional way, you can also do that as well. If you are a coach or consultant, join the group. There's a lot of great content in there. Yeah, they're the three ways.
Brilliant. And have a look down there into the description of the video and of the podcast. All his information is there with links. So don't be shy. Check him out. I mean, Jobe, I'm so grateful that you joined me today and that you were so honest about your path. I was astounded to see so many similarities with my own life. And the similarities, you basically described my life, and our outlet was just different. Otherwise, the preoccupation with it, or the flow-on effects of it, the drive why we did it, it's essential. Essentially, it's the same. It's there it is. It's actually quite astounding, and it just shows that the different addictions out there, that are all driven by the same underlying principles in our brain. So therefore, guys out there, if you are suffering from an addiction, we're just 1 in 3 chance. That's the chance of an addiction out there. You are not alone. You feel shame, you feel guilt. Well, guess what we have done? There is the same there. We're all the same. You are not alone. And more importantly, look at Jobe. Look at me. We got our shit together. And well, we're still getting our shit together because it's an ongoing journey. Okay? This is not something where you say, yay, I'm cured. Great. Let's try again. I've got new ideas for really bad choices. No, the problem is it's an ongoing journey. So you either choose to get better and work on this new and improved version of you, or you choose to do nothing, and that automatically means that you're giving in to the bad version that will crawl back and that will try to get you to do the same stupid things that you did in the past. Maybe with a minor variation, but it will end up in tears, guaranteed. So no, look at Jobe, and if anything from him has gelled with you, get in touch with him. Don't be shy, okay? So do the right thing. Look after yourself. Learn to love yourself. Scars, vomit, everything, that is you. But the past does not equal the future, okay? You choose the next chapter in your book. You write that bloody chapter. Don't let anyone else write that, because it's your book, okay? So go for it, guys. Jobe, thank you so much for coming onto my show. It was an absolute honor, and I'm very, very grateful that you were so humble and honest and open about your addiction. Thank you so much.
No, thank you very much for having me on. I love what you're doing. I hope we were able to help someone today. I hope this some of this gave a little bit of some good advice out there.
There was shitloads of that today, and I'm very, very grateful for that. You guys out there, stay strong. You can do it. Look after yourself. Bye.